Brandon Aiyuk seems to be available for a very expensive price. The Jaguars inquired about trading for him, and the Niners asked for their first-round pick and wide receiver Zay Jones. It's a 17th pick. Now the Steelers are interested in Brandon Aiyuk, and they seem to know exactly what he costs. They have the 20th pick in the draft. What do you think of this business development?
Well, but first of all, the thing didn't go through with Jacksonville.
Did not. Jacksonville said it was too much.
It was too much. So that's an important piece of information. What we know is then probably Aiyuk is up for sale. It doesn't mean they're going to get rid of him, but it means they're open to offers. Probably Jacksonville didn't want to give up a first round for him. From my point of view, he's worth a first round pick. The Niners should try to keep him, but that may be an issue with their salary structure. Pittsburgh, if they could 20th pick plus probably a wide receiver, it would be a win-win for both teams. What do you think?
It might be a win-win for both teams. I mean, the question we keep asking, do the Niners want to keep Aiyuk? Is this something they want to do? What about him? If he doesn't want to be with the 49ers anymore, I know he's contractually obligated to be there, but if he doesn't want to be there, he won't meet them in the middle on negotiations. He won't be happy. Why don't just trade him and get someone who does want to be here? If that's the case. And I'm not sure how he feels, but his girlfriend came out after the season and said, I don't know if we're going to be here next year. He was asked, are you going to be here? He said, if it makes sense. It seems like he has some misgivings.
Well, why don't you remind people you asked people at the Super Bowl what their relationship was with Kyle Shanahan and what he said.
Yeah, I asked Debo, Aiyuk, Trent Williams, Bosa. How is your relationship with Kyle Shanahan different from other relationships you've had with coaches? Trent Williams, Debo, and Bosa all said, oh, it's like a friendship. I mean, we're going to be talking and we'll be friends long after football. Aiyuk thought about it and said, it's different. That's my dog, though, but it's different. And he wouldn't get into how it was different. And when you say something's different, to me, that's like a nice way of saying whatever you're not saying.
Yeah, and it could imply we're not really all that close. And right. Remember, when he was a young player, Kyle put him in the doghouse publicly and never explained
why.
Right.
Yeah. Sort of implied that he wasn't working as hard as possible in practices. When I've seen Brandon Aiyuk practice, he practices extremely. He'll fight Fred Warner in May over something in practice. So I don't exactly understand what the issue was, but I could see if Brandon Aiyuk has some resentment.
So again, I would like to be really clear on this. If the Niners were to get rid of Aiyuk, I think it would really be a big deal because Aiyuk is their best wide receiver and he's one hell of a wide receiver. But if there are things happening that we don't know about, to get a first round pick and maybe a wide receiver from Pittsburgh, if that's where it happens, sure. And the other thing is Pittsburgh has had pretty bad quarterbacks very recently. Now they have a pretty good one. And Russell Wilson is going to be able to get the ball down the field to Aiyuk in a way that Purdy couldn't.
Agree. And maybe what the Niners are thinking is, is he worth... Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said. Say it again.
Maybe what the Niners are thinking, like, is Brandon Aiyuk worth 26, 27
you're breaking up
$1 million a year? I'm breaking up. I'm just looking up some stats. Sorry.
Listen, hold on. I think you do a little better when you lean back from the microphone a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So why don't you try that again, leaning back a little and say what you said, because we didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think what the Niners might be thinking is Brandon Aiyuk worth what he's asking for? Yes, he's worth a lot of money. But if they're not going to give him 130, 150, 160 targets a season, are they going to ever get a good return on their investment, even though he's technically worth the money? If they're not, if they don't want to change the structure of their offense, if they want to keep things the same and use that position as much as they use it, maybe they should trade him.
Absolutely. I understand that they have sort of a short passing offense, and he is really their deep threat. So maybe they could do just as well, not just as well, they could do well and cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, if you trade him and you draft a wide receiver, you're not obligated to give him 10 targets a game because you're not paying him that much money. Like the Niners are in that position right now with Deebo Samuel. Why did he get 11 targets in the Super Bowl when he wasn't playing well? They paid him like $28 million a year. They're trying to justify their investment. And so far they haven't. It would be tough to justify the investment in Aiyuk if they don't throw him the ball that much.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So again, I think I would hate to see, I'm not a fan, but as an observer, it would be discouraging to see him go since he's one of the best players on the team. Having said that, it would make sense.
And I wouldn't be surprised. Go ahead.
If they got a lot for him.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers make this happen. It seems like this is something that you could do the night of the draft. You don't necessarily have to do this now, but they could negotiate for the next month. And if Pittsburgh's more motivated to give Brandon Aiyuk a contract extension than the 49ers, I can see this happening. I think the 20th pick in the draft would be fair. Fair for both sides.
I have a question. Let's say this happens. So we're being totally hypothetical here. How do you think the fans would react? Because I do have a feeling on that one.
I think they'd be upset for a minute, maybe 90 seconds. And then they would work very hard to see it from the organization's perspective. And within half an hour, they'd be calling it the smartest move of the offseason.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I do.
And that's just the nature of being a certain type of fan. I get it. And I wouldn't necessarily be against the trade. If they trade Brandon Aiyuk for the 20th pick in the draft and then use that pick to take an offensive tackle that they wouldn't have been able to get at 31, and that guy is eventually Trent Williams' replacement at left tackle, great trade. Great trade.
Yeah.
Can't knock that. But if you trade him and you take another wide receiver and he isn't half as good as Brandon Aiyuk, because that's what they did with Buckner. Traded Buckner. You spent that pick on his replacement, which is tough. And Kinlaw wasn't Buckner. So although they could have taken an offensive lineman, Tristan Wirfs, who would have made that trade worth it. So the Niners just got to be smart about whatever they pick with that pick.
Right.
If they do it. Yeah.
If they're smart.
If they're smart.